Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Robert, and for 10 years, I sacrificed everything for a family that never saw me as anything more than a wallet with legs. I wasn't the golden child. That title went to my younger brother, Eric, the same brother who never worked a steady job, never contributed a cent, and still got the house, the car, and every dime of my parents' estate, while I was left with nothing. But before I get ahead of myself, let me take you back to the beginning, back to when I still believed that love and duty meant something. I'm 37 years old, a software engineer by day, rideshare driver by night. I've lived most of my adult life in the suburbs of Portland, just 30 minutes away from my parents' house in Gresham, a fading white two-story with a moss-eaten roof and cracked concrete steps, but it was home. Or so I thought. I never married. Never had kids. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't afford the time, the energy, or the money. For the last 10 years, every extra dollar I made went into that house, into my parents' medications, electric bills, and hospital stays. I took care of them. Quietly. Faithfully. Mom used to call me her rock. It made me feel proud. Every time I patched a leaking pipe, bought her prescriptions, or paid off another chunk of their mortgage, I told myself, they see you. They love you. They're just not good at showing it. But that illusion shattered on a rainy afternoon, one that changed everything. It started innocently enough. Mom asked me to help her organize some paperwork. She was getting older, her eyesight fading, and she said her head hurt too much to make sense of all the envelopes and files. I agreed, like I always did. I sat at the old dining room table, the air thick with the scent of dust and old carpet cleaner. She passed me a cardboard box filled with documents, bank statements, insurance paperwork, home maintenance invoices. Most of them were things I had paid for. Then, buried at the bottom of the box, I found a yellow envelope sealed tighter than the others. It wasn't labeled. Curiosity got the better of me. When I opened it, everything stopped. It was a handwritten will, signed by both Mom and Dad. My eyes scanned the lines. The house, valued at nearly $450,000, went to Eric. The family car, Dad's precious SUV, also to Eric. The jewelry passed down from Grandma, Eric again. Their joint savings account, every last cent. Eric's. My name wasn't mentioned once. Not a single line. Not a single item. Not even a thank you. I stared at the paper like it had grown fangs. My hands shook. My lips went dry. Mom, I said, my voice raw. What is this? She looked up, startled, but just for a moment. Then her expression hardened. Oh, that. Robert, you're independent. You don't need anything from us. You're doing well. Eric's still trying to find his path. I blinked, stunned. I paid the mortgage for the past 5 years. The roof, the plumbing, the furnace last winter, I covered all of that. Without me, this place would have been condemned. She nodded slightly, almost dismissively. And we're grateful. But Eric, he's our youngest. He needs support. I stood up, clutching the will like it might burn through my skin. Does Dad know about this? I asked. He's the one who wrote it, she said quietly. I left the dining room and found Dad in his favorite chair, watching baseball with a can of warm beer in his hand. The game's volume droned in the background. I held the will out to him. Dad. Why am I not in it? He didn't even look at me. Because you're fine, he said. Eric needs the leg up. I felt like I was falling through the floor. I've given everything to this family. And we appreciate that, he said. Still not looking at me. But don't make a scene. That word, scene, cut deeper than he could ever know. As if my heartbreak was just theatrics. I left without another word. Rain slammed against my windshield as I drove back to my tiny apartment in Portland. But it wasn't the rain that blurred my vision. That night, I stared at my laptop screen, looking at the family's shared bank account, the one where I had funneled nearly every paycheck for a decade. Auto payments lined the screen like scars: mortgage, utilities, insurance. I'd been their financial lifeline. Their silent partner. Their human ATM. And now, I was nothing to them. But that was just the beginning. The betrayal wasn't just the will. It was what came next: the guilt-tripping, the entitlement, the texts from Eric asking for money like I owed him something. I had spent my entire adult life being the good son, and they'd thrown me away like I was nothing. But they didn't know what I was capable of. They thought I would take it, quietly, obediently, like always. They were wrong. Because in the ashes of that betrayal, something inside me shifted. The man who once paid to keep their world running. He died that night. And someone new was born in his place. Someone who wasn't going to take it anymore. I didn't sleep that night. My apartment was silent except for the soft hum of the fridge and the storm outside. I sat in the dark, staring at my phone, reading that will over and over again, hoping I had misread something. That maybe I'd missed a line. Missed my name. But I hadn't. There was nothing for me in that will. No house. No savings. No recognition of the $200,000 I had poured into keeping that place from crumbling. I kept telling myself, maybe they just made a mistake. Maybe mom and dad just didn't realize what they were doing. But the truth was, they did. The next morning, I logged into the shared bank account and just stared. Line after line of auto payments. Mortgage, electric, water, internet, medications, repairs. All of them coming out of my account. I traced each one back, calculated the monthly costs over the years. I was at $193,000, not including the cash I handed mom or the supplies I bought without receipts. I'd given 10 years of my life. And they gave me nothing but a pat on the head and a will with my name erased. I was still sitting there, half numb, when my phone rang. Mom's number. I hesitated. I didn't want to talk to her. But some broken part of me, some part that still craved their approval, answered. Her voice was clipped, not worn. Not apologetic. Robert. The electric company says the payment didn't go through. Neither did the water bill. Can you check what's going on? No, good morning. No, how are you? Just a reminder of what I'd become to them, a utility. A service. I took a breath. I stopped the payments, I said flatly. There was a pause. What? Why? Because I saw the will, Mom. You and Dad cut me out. Completely. She didn't deny it. Robert. Eric needs support. He's not as strong as you. I almost laughed. Not out of amusement, but out of disbelief. You think I'm strong? Mom, I'm falling apart. I've worked 2 jobs for 10 years. I missed vacations. I gave up dating. I never bought myself anything. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment while you and Dad sit in a house I paid for. She went quiet. Then she said something I'll never forget. Don't be dramatic. We raised you. You owe us. Owe you. That was the moment I realized she didn't see what I'd done as love. She saw it as repayment. My existence, in her eyes, was a debt I hadn't finished paying. I hung up without another word. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. Eric. His message. Bro, the house is gonna lose power. Just pay it like usual. Don't be a jerk. No, please. No apology. Just entitlement. I stared at the screen, fingers trembling. Eric, who hadn't paid a single bill in 10 years, was calling me a jerk. I didn't respond. The next day, Dad called. "Robert. You think this is funny? Punishing your mother and brother by cutting them off." His voice was cold. Commanding. Like I was a misbehaving child. "You left me out of your will," I said. "You're grown. You don't need anything. You're acting like a spoiled brat." I felt my breath catch. Spoiled. I hadn't bought myself a new pair of shoes in 5 years. I'd driven a beat-up Honda with a broken radio so I could pay for their roof repairs. "Eric needs a foundation," he continued. "He's our legacy." I froze. Eric. The legacy. What was I, then? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just hung up the phone. And that's when something in me began to unravel. Or maybe, unleash. I stopped answering calls. I shut off the automatic payments. I removed my name from the shared account. I watched as the family's financial lifeline vanished overnight, and no one knew what to do without me. But that's when the guilt-tripping started. Not from strangers, but from my own extended family. Aunt Melissa called to tell me Mom was worried sick. Uncle James said I was heartless. Even Eric's girlfriend texted me, calling me a traitor to the family. "They raised you," she wrote. "You're turning your back on them now." They didn't know what I knew. They hadn't seen the will. The proof that I'd been erased. I tried to explain to one cousin, just one. I showed her the receipts. The bank statements. The will. She went silent. Then said, "I'm sorry, Robert. I had no idea. This is so wrong." She was the only one who understood. Everyone else. They thought I'd gone rogue. That I was abandoning a frail old couple in their time of need. No one asked me how I was doing. If I could still afford my rent. If I was eating. If I was lonely. I wasn't their son. Their nephew. Their cousin. I was just the banker who suddenly closed the vault. And the silence that followed, it was deafening. It had been 2 weeks since I'd cut them off, 2 weeks of silence from my family, except for the occasional venom-filled voicemail or guilt-drenched text. I was exhausted, but not from working 2 jobs. For the first time in 10 years, I had stopped working myself to the bone for others. No, this exhaustion was deeper, a soul weariness. I still woke up early. Still made coffee. Still stared at my laptop. But now, instead of scanning overdue bills, I was reading photography blogs. I even dared to pick up my old camera again. It was during one of these quiet mornings, while cleaning out my filing cabinet, that I stumbled upon an old USB drive, one I hadn't touched in years. Curious, I plugged it into my laptop. Dozens of files popped up, tax returns, scanned receipts, even photos of the roof when I'd fixed it during the storm 2 winters ago. Then I saw a folder labeled, Gresham House, Deed and Contracts. My heart skipped. Inside was everything, original mortgage paperwork, insurance documents, renovation permits, and one item that stood out. Joint Property Agreement, Addendum, R. Carter. I clicked it open. I remembered now, how in year 3 of covering their mortgage, a young lawyer friend of mine convinced me to have my name added as a partial owner of the house. "It's smart," he had said. "If you're paying into it, protect yourself." At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. My parents never mentioned it. I assumed they forgot, or ignored it. But now, reading that legally binding addendum, I realized something. They couldn't legally exclude me. That house. It wasn't 100% theirs anymore. I held a 35% stake. It was all here, in black and white, notarized, time-stamped, and legitimate. My hands trembled, not with fear, but a slow-burning fury. They had written me out of their will, all while knowing that the house was partially mine. And then the second blow hit me. In the same folder, I found scanned checks and email threads showing Dad taking out a reverse mortgage loan against the house, just a year ago, without informing me. He had used the full property value, not just his portion. That was illegal. He had signed off on it without my consent. And now the bank was calling me too, because my name was still on the deed. The foreclosure letters? They weren't mistakes, they were warnings addressed to all listed owners. Suddenly, everything clicked. They hadn't excluded me by accident. They had tried to erase me, from the will, from the documents, from the family, because they wanted to avoid confronting the fact that they had used me, and were still using me, even in financial fraud. That was the moment everything inside me shifted. This wasn't just betrayal. This was deception. Financial, emotional, and personal. I didn't just feel heartbroken anymore. I felt weaponized. I leaned back in my chair, breathing deeply, the weight of truth crashing down like a tidal wave. I wasn't powerless. In fact, I had all the power now. The next day, I visited a real estate lawyer downtown. I showed him everything, the documents, the will, the emails, the reverse mortgage. He stared in disbelief. "Robert, this is serious. Not only do you have a rightful ownership claim, but your father committed mortgage fraud by omitting you on a loan application. You could pursue legal action and force a sale of the property." My heart pounded. "So I could evict them?" "If you wanted to. But at the very least, you can block any future sale. That house can't be touched unless you agree. It's legally entangled with your name." He paused, leaning forward. "You've been their silent investor. But now, if you choose to, you can become their reckoning." I sat in silence for a long time. Because I realized something else. For 10 years, they'd seen me as the helper, the fixer, the reliable mule. But now, they would have to see me as something else entirely. The one they should never have underestimated. I didn't want vengeance just for the sake of vengeance. I wanted clarity. I wanted accountability. And most of all, I wanted to see what would happen when the person they depended on flipped the script. When I left the lawyer's office that day, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt awake. For the first time in years, I had a clear path forward. No more chasing love that would never come. No more begging to be seen. This was no longer about being the good son. This was about taking my power back, one step at a time. The lawyer helped me file the necessary paperwork to freeze any transactions involving the Gresham house. With my name on the deed, the reverse mortgage loan had violated banking regulations. That triggered an automatic audit. Which meant, the bank was about to come knocking. And not just with calls. With investigators. My parents had lied on a federal financial form. I didn't even have to press charges. I just had to let the truth unravel on its own. But I wasn't done. There was one more thread to pull, and his name was Eric. He'd coasted through life with a smirk, always knowing Mom and Dad would catch him. He was their baby. Their legacy. While I broke my back working 2 jobs, he stayed in that upstairs bedroom, launching failed crypto schemes and calling himself an entrepreneur. But I knew something else. Eric had debts. Lots of them. While digging through the documents on that old USB drive, I found something fascinating, emails from Dad to a family friend named Clint, discussing a personal loan to bail out Eric's startup. A loan Dad co-signed on Eric's behalf, using the house's equity as collateral. Another illegal move. Eric had not only sucked my parents dry, but they'd used my financial contributions to secure his fantasy projects. They took my money and bet it on a slot machine named Eric. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to confront them in the street. I just needed to cut off the oxygen. So I made 3 calls. First, to the mortgage bank. I forwarded them all documentation that proved my share in the house, along with copies of the unauthorized reverse mortgage. Second, to the IRS tip line. I submitted an anonymous report about unreported loans and gifts made from mom and dad to Eric, exceeding annual gifting limits. The IRS doesn't care about family loyalty. They care about tax fraud. And third, my favorite, to Eric's biggest lender, a credit union he'd defaulted on twice already. I posed as an interested business associate, asking if Eric's debt status was public record. They didn't give details, but they confirmed there was ongoing litigation. That was enough. With every click, every document sent, I wasn't destroying them. I was just letting the consequences finally catch up. They had built a house of lies on my foundation. Now it was time for it to collapse, on its own. A week later, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. It was Dad. "Robert," he said, his voice stiff, forced. "There's some banking issue with the house. Did you do something?" I kept my voice calm. I wanted him to hear himself. "I filed a property freeze. Since my name is still legally on the deed." "You knew that, right?" He went silent. "Robert," he finally said, "you're going to ruin this family. Don't be spiteful." I smiled bitterly. "I'm not being spiteful, Dad. I'm being responsible. You lied on a mortgage form. You tried to cut me out of something I legally own." Another pause. "That's just paperwork. It's fraud." His voice hardened. He dropped the fake softness. "You think you're better than us now? Is that it? Just because you paid some bills and learned how to read contracts?" I let that hang in the air. Then I said quietly, "No, Dad. I think I finally see who I've been dealing with." And I hung up. The next call came 2 days later, from Mom. She was crying. "Robert, please. The bank sent a notice. They're freezing the house. We can't refinance. What are we going to do?" "You could ask Eric," I said, calmly. She sobbed harder. "He's overwhelmed. He's trying. So was I. For 10 years. There was silence. Then, her voice, whisper soft. "We didn't think you'd ever fight back." And that was it, wasn't it? They hadn't thought I was capable. I was the obedient one. The helper. The invisible son who would work until he dropped, as long as they gave him scraps of affection. But now. Now I was the son they feared. And I wasn't done yet. After the last phone call with Mom, I turned off my ringer. No more pleas. No more guilt. No more attempts to reel me back in. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about exposure. For years, they'd painted a pretty picture to the world, humble, aging parents trying their best, with a struggling youngest son who just needed support. Meanwhile, I was in the background, footing the bills, silently holding up the frame. They thought I'd never break the illusion. But now I was. And it started with the house. The bank launched a formal investigation. I didn't have to push it, my documentation spoke for itself. Within days, they discovered the fraudulent reverse mortgage and the unsigned owner clause. The result? An immediate foreclosure freeze. No refinancing. No selling. No reverse loans. And guess who they came looking for? Eric. Apparently, when Dad used the house's value to co-sign Eric's failed business loan, he also falsely claimed sole ownership of the home. The lender, now alert to the truth, initiated legal proceedings, and Eric found himself caught in a legal crossfire between the credit union, the mortgage bank, and the IRS. Yes, the IRS. Because the tip I sent about unreported gifts triggered an audit. Within a week, my cousin messaged me. "Dude. Eric's freaking out. He's got an IRS appointment, and your dad is blaming him for everything." I didn't reply. Instead, I logged onto my blog and wrote a new post titled, "The Cost of Being the Good Son." I didn't name names. But I told the story, how I gave up my 20s and 30s, funded a house I didn't own, supported a family that cut me out of their will, and how I found the courage to walk away. It exploded. Emails poured in from readers who had been used by family, discarded by parents, manipulated into silence. They called me brave. Some called me a hero. But I didn't feel heroic. I felt relieved. For the first time, I wasn't burying my pain under obligation. I was exposing it. Channeling it. And then, the final domino fell. I got a call from a family friend, someone who had known my parents for decades. "Robert," she said cautiously, "your mom told everyone you abandoned them. That you ran off and left them penniless. But now I'm hearing, it's not true." I sighed. "No. It's not. I funded their life for 10 years. I was written out of the will, and they hid it from me while using my money." There was a long pause. "I believe you. You know why? Because you were always the one at the hospital. The one fixing their pipes. Eric never lifted a finger." She paused again. "People are starting to talk. They're not siding with your parents anymore." That night, I sat by my window in Portland, watching the rain wash over the streets. It felt symbolic, like the storm was rinsing away the guilt I'd carried for so long. But I wasn't done yet. Because they'd called me selfish. They'd tried to make me look like the villain. So I made one final move. I sent certified copies of the will, the mortgage paperwork, and the co-signed loan documents to every extended family member who had judged me. Aunts. Uncles. Cousins. Even my old high school teacher who once said, "Your parents must be so proud of you." The subject line. For those who've asked why I walked away. No explanation. Just the facts. Within hours, I got 3 emails, 2 apologies, 1 stunned silence. I didn't need their approval. But it felt good to finally shine a light on what I'd endured. The truth was now undeniable. The good son they forgot about. He just became the one they'd never forget. It had been almost a month since I cut the cords. A month since I ended the payments. A month since I stopped answering calls. And now, the silence was finally cracking. One evening, as I returned from a local photo shoot, I found a letter waiting for me in my mailbox. A real, handwritten letter, folded neatly inside an envelope with trembling handwriting. It was from Mom. "Robert. We are sorry if we hurt you. We didn't mean to. The bank is taking the house. We're scared. We don't know where to go. Eric is trying his best but. Please. Just this once. Help us. We need you." Inside the envelope was another note. From Eric. "Bro. I know I've been a mess. But Mom and Dad are in trouble. We're all family. You can't just turn your back. The house will be gone. Please. Let's fix this together." There it was. The moment I knew would come. They wanted me back. They wanted the good son again. But I wasn't that man anymore. Still, some part of me, maybe the last sliver of my former self, picked up the phone and called Dad. He answered like he hadn't been waiting by the phone. "Robert." His voice was gravel. Hollow. "I know about the foreclosure," I said. "I know the IRS audit hit Eric. I know the bank is moving in." He didn't deny it. "We made mistakes. You betrayed me. We were trying to help your brother." There was silence. Then I said, "I'll help. But only if you do one thing." He perked up. "Anything. Just name it. Rewrite the will." Split the assets. Acknowledge what I've done. Put it on paper. His breath caught. You're putting conditions on your own parents. No. I'm drawing a boundary. His tone sharpened. Ungrateful little. And that was all I needed to hear. He hadn't changed. Not even now. They didn't want my help out of love. They wanted it out of desperation. And still, even as they begged, they couldn't respect me. I hung up. And blocked the number. That moment didn't crush me, it freed me. Because I had extended a final olive branch. And they snapped it in half. 3 days later, I got a text from my cousin, the only one who had supported me from the beginning. They lost the house. Foreclosure finalized. Mom and Dad are moving in with Aunt Mary. Eric's crashing in some apartment. He's working retail now. I just thought you'd want to know. I stared at the screen. The house I poured 10 years and $200,000 into, gone. I didn't feel rage. I didn't even feel sad. I felt relieved. They had chosen Eric. They had tried to erase me. And now, without me, their world had finally collapsed, under the weight of their own choices. But it wasn't just the foreclosure that mattered. It was what I saw next. That night, I checked my blog's email and found a message from a journalist. A small Portland outlet had picked up my story after it went semi-viral. Robert, I read your post. I think people need to hear what happens to the silent caregivers, the ones who sacrifice everything and are still discarded. Would you be willing to do an interview? I paused. I'd always been invisible. Quiet. Behind the scenes. But now. Now people were listening. So I said yes. The article published a week later. The Forgotten Son, How One Man Funded His Family's Future, and Got Cut Out. It didn't use names. It didn't need to. But people felt it. Thousands of shares. Dozens of emails. Other forgotten sons. Daughters. Caregivers. Spouses. I wasn't alone. The final twist wasn't just that I walked away from my family. It was that I found a new one. In my students, the kids I taught photography to every Saturday. In Sarah, my fellow photographer, who saw me, really saw me, and said one night over coffee. You know, you're not broken. You were just trying to love people who didn't know how to love you back. And in myself. The man who used to wake up every day wondering how much more he had to give. Now woke up asking. What do I want to build today? They lost the house. The peeling white 2-story in Gresham, the one I patched, funded, and sacrificed for, was auctioned off by the bank within weeks. It sold below market value, water damaged and falling apart. No one had maintained it since I left. The cracks I once sealed had split wide open. The roof I once climbed to fix was now caved in. It was a metaphor, really. You can't build a future on someone else's back forever. Eventually, the ground gives way. Mom and Dad moved in with Aunt Mary, quietly, without fanfare. No farewell party. No dramatic send-off. Just cardboard boxes, wilted plants, and broken pride. Eric ended up in a studio apartment in a rougher part of town. The startup he once bragged about online was gone, the Instagram page deleted, the domain name expired. He worked night shifts at a supermarket now, bagging groceries under fluorescent lights. And me? I moved forward. The first big step. I launched my photography website. Not for business. For myself. A gallery of small moments, faces, skies, old bridges, the golden haze of dawn. I called it Seen. Because for the first time in my life, I finally felt seen. One rainy afternoon, I got an email. From Mom. Robert. We're sorry. We shouldn't have excluded you. We were trying to help Eric, but we see now how wrong that was. You were our foundation. We never told you that. We hope one day you'll forgive us. It wasn't flowery. It wasn't perfect. But it was the first time she'd acknowledged the truth. I read it once. Then again. And then I closed the laptop. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need groveling or groaning apologies. I had already won, not by taking anything from them, but by taking my life back. I now teach 2 photography classes every weekend. Some of my students can't afford cameras, so I lend them mine. One girl, Lily, gave me a photo she took of a flower growing from a cracked sidewalk. It reminds me of you, Mr. Robert, she said. You grew even when things were broken. That photo sits framed above my desk. It reminds me who I am, not what I gave, or what I lost. But what I became. Sometimes people ask if I'll ever speak to my parents again. Maybe. Maybe not. But the difference now? I choose. I'm no longer a background character in my own life. I'm the one writing the story. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.